Transformation remains top of mind in the growth narrative for South Africa. But does it work where the proverbial taxi meets the road? Well, Ismail Essa is the man at the coalface of SANRAL's commitment to transformation. So what does transformation mean for you? I'm guessing that for SANRAL, this is a process that's happening both inside and outside the business.
Yes. The primary focus of the transformation, say, unit or transformation initiative in SANRAL is outside of SANRAL. The industry that SANRAL operates in is the construction industry, more specifically the road construction industry. That's been primarily dominated by white-owned companies. The management has been white. Most of the technical people that are involved in the construction side are white people. And also the supervisory level has been white. We as SANRAL are looking to transform this industry or change the nature of the industry because the black people, who are the majority in South Africa, have been excluded largely above, let's say, the supervisory level. Below the supervisory level, it's 100% black people that do the actual physical work that's required. But from there upwards, it's been dominated by white people. So we've been trying to bring in and create the atmosphere and create the ability of black people to be able to do this work. The talent is there amongst black people. It needs to be nurtured, it needs to be brought out, mentored and coached into be able to do the work. So primarily that's where our focus is.
So how do you go about doing this transformational work?
Well, the first thing is we put into our tender document certain requirements. So in terms of the BE Act, we are allowed to call for certain percentages of black people at certain levels, which we are doing. But the primary area we do it in the skills development. So we force people, or we encourage them. So it's a stick and a carrot approach to say, train black people in these aspects, in these career areas, and bring them into your organization to get the practical experience, because the theory on its own is not enough. They need the exposure, they need the guidance, and they need the mentorship to bring the best out in them.
Is it working? Because, you know, you've got a lot of decades to reverse, and people want to see things happening yesterday, but I guess it takes time.
Yes, now this is where I must make this famous statement of mine. I don't know if it's my own, but I use it a lot. It's transformation is not an event, it's a journey. It takes time, it will take generations to get to a normalization, and we need to be cognizant of that fact. Now, the new players that come in, they want to, in like 3 or 5 years, they want to be already at the highest level of contracting and things like that. That's not going to happen that fast. To get from the CIDB, which is Construction Industry Development Board, to get up their scale, which is a 9-point scale. So you start at a CIDB grade 1 level, and you end up at a CIB grade 9. The journey there, all things being equal, is about 25 years to move up. And along the way, you need to bring more skilled people in. We need more, how shall I say, more business experience, business opportunities, and exposure to the industry.
So I would imagine that your procurement process has to work that, you know, you're not getting chances jumping grades and doing work that they're not ready for.
Yes, that's most definitely like that. If we classify in SANRAL, the grades 1 to 5 are generally subcontractors that work for us. Grade 6 is the sort of change point where the guy can be a solo subcontractor, or he becomes a main contractor on our very small jobs. And from grade 7 upwards, they are becoming what we call the main contractors.
I know that with regards to stakeholder involvement, you have something that's described as a 14-point plan. Talk us through what this plan is and what it does.
We needed a way and a method and a mechanism, let's say, almost a blueprint of how we engage the communities and we engage the stakeholders that surround our projects in there. So we had to bring in the subcontracting, we had to bring in the skills development elements. So in there, we brought in a process. So we have these 14 points that we work around. One is, how do you communicate with the community? How do you engage with the community? So there we have what we call a project liaison committee. Now, a lot of people mistaken this thing to a steering committee. Liaison committee is there for us to work together with the stakeholders in the local area to deliver the project. So the contractor, the consulting engineer who does the designs and supervises the quality of the work as it's being executed by the contractor, and ourselves are part of this liaison committee, and we use this committee to communicate and then hear the concerns and the requirements that the community might have. Mm-hmm. So we assess the skills that are available in the community. If there are insufficient skills, say in building a concrete structure, then we will train these people in the design phase, so we can upskill those people ahead of time. So when the project starts, they can be employed on the project. The other thing is we prepare the contractors, the small subcontractors from the area. We get them compliant in terms of registration, be on the central supplier database of National Treasury, are in compliance with the SARS requirements, and have all the other compliant issues that need to be in place before they can work on a contract. And so on that way, we try and leave a bit of a legacy in the community after we finished our project. So people benefit out of it, and we'll try and leave the maximum amount of funds within the local area, either by materials or accommodation that people might need, catering that people might need on the project. So every aspect is analyzed and seen, what can we do locally to assist the people and develop their area.
All right, so you're hard at work. So what would you say have been some of your notable achievements today?
Notable achievements is if you look at the BEE scale, about 60% and upwards of our work is going to BEE level 1 contractors. So these are the grade 1 contractors. They have at least a black ownership of about 35% or more. So that's where the majority of the work is going. Some of the work is of international nature, especially with software and certain things that we can't acquire or secure in South Africa. We have to go outside, but that's a very small percentage in our case, probably less than 5%. And the other 25% that's sort of hanging around is slowly transforming, but it's in areas where we don't have direct sort of control. Areas like IT, areas like banking and things like that, where it's difficult for us to have a direct influence. But in the construction industry, I think we're doing extremely well, although some may not accept it. The other big problem we have is that there's an oversupply of contractors on the smaller level. So your grade 1s and grade 2s, there's like 50,000 of them on the books of the CIDB. We never ever in this country ever going to be able to employ 50,000 small contractors. I think that the right number there would be around 20,000, and you could accommodate them across the private sector, municipalities, provinces, and ourselves, and other authorities such as water affairs and things like that, to give them work. But at 50,000, it's a tall ask.
So if the bulk are sitting at grade 1, 2, let's say 3, and the more experienced and the bigger contractors are 6, 7, 8, 9, how are you making sure that the 6, 7, 8, 9s are training the 1, 2, 3 or growing them as you procure? Because they're all external businesses, aren't they?
Yes. What we do in our projects is we have what we call a mandatory percentage of work that must be done by these small contractors. So it's part of the contract, it's a condition of the contract. And when the contract is awarded, that's a requirement that the main contractor has to meet. So we say to them that 30% of this contract, let's assume 100 million rand contract, so 30 million must be done by these small guys under your guidance, under your mentorship and coaching, that these guys will deliver all this. So we make it a condition of the contract. So he has to do it. If he doesn't do it, he pays penalties. If he does it well, he gets a bonus.
So looking forward, what's a target that you've got in mind in terms of where you want to get with this transformation equation, and by when?
That's a difficult one to ask, for the simple reason that the nature of work in this industry is cyclical. You go from famine to feast. So it depends. When government has got sufficient funds, they push out a lot more work. When they haven't got enough funds, they cut back on work, which is detrimental to the growth of this industry, because you move from famine to feast, which means it affects people in terms of livelihood, in terms of career growth and things like that. So, you could have a construction company employing 10,000 people, and then in 2 years' time that drops down to 2,000. And that's where our problem is. How do you upskill these people? How do you keep them going? Most people leave the industry and don't come back because they say that's very dangerous. It's an unpredictable industry. I can't stay there because I need to work for 40 years in my career. And with this, every 5 years there's a change. It's not where I want to be.
All right, we'll have lots more conversations about skilling and other issues and future programs. But for today, thanks so much indeed for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Next week, we focus on skills development, where it matters, to whom it matters, and how SANRAL is rewriting the playbook.